It's Taco Tuesday!
Yo, what's going on, everyone? Taco here, and today I'll be sharing with you guys my guide for the expedition Garden of Genesis. I'm going to start off with the key things to know before you even enter the expedition, any of the questline parts that confused me on my first try, or maybe aren't as clear as you're going through the expedition, and then of course explaining the mechanics to help you successfully defeat the bosses in this dungeon, which I think can be extremely challenging for your first few tries. Before we get started, hit that like button if you do find this video helpful, and subscribe if you're new and want to see future New World guides and videos. We're getting super close to our goal of 500 subs by the end of the year. Now, to obtain a Genesis tuning orb, you'll need to complete the questline starting with Lace and Reese, located at the Mountain Home Outpost in Shattered Mountains. Eventually, you're going to get to the Blight Resistance quest, and then once you complete that, you'll be rewarded with a Genesis tuning orb. The entrance to the Garden of Genesis is located in Eden Grove, and you can easily fast travel to either the Valor Hold or the Eastburn Outpost to help get you there quicker. Just like the previous expeditions, there is Genesis-specific loot obtained from unlocking the chests or from the boss drops themselves. For this expedition, there is a legendary spear, a focus-based jewelry charm, a bow, strength-based earrings, a sword, and lastly, a fire staff. The gear rewards from Genesis for endgame are great in my experience, and something to note is that a lot of people are deciding to store or save their Genesis orbs. The reason being that it's a really effective way right now to help level up your watermark. So it may be better for you to save your orbs for when you're at a higher watermark, maybe you've plateaued from farming or you're tired of elite chest runs. Personally, I just wanted some fun content, even though my watermark is not high by any means. So that's something to think about if you are going to go ahead and use an orb, or if you see anyone recruiting, it might be something to hop on and get yourself in there. Moving on to gear, with this being a level 60 endgame expedition, it's obviously going to be a challenge, especially for your first time or first few runs. I know a lot of people that I've seen or have played with recommend a gear score of 550, and I've also seen people suggest having at least 520 for a gear score. I personally went in with a gear score of around 510, and I think I fared fine. Genesis is going to be filled with Angry Earth enemies, which take increased damage from fire and slash damage. This is going to be big for mage DPSs like myself using a fire staff and pairing it either with ice gauntlets or the void gauntlets to empower and support your teammates. Now also, Angry Earth enemies are going to be resistant to thrust damage, which makes a rapier less effective for this particular expedition. You're going to want to obviously have your infused or powerful health pots, mana pots, regeneration, and then food. And then you can also use a blight resistant potion because it's possible to be blight affected when you are in the expedition. And then I'd also recommend Angry Earth coating for your weapons, which you can either make with Arcana or you can buy, and that's just going to give you more damage output. After moving through defeating the blight enemies and the hives that they spawn from as you're moving through the dungeon, you're going to get to Taxodius, which is the first mini-boss. As usual in New World, the mini-bosses early on are going to give you a bit of practice to what the major end bosses are going to use in terms of mechanics. So the two mechanics from this fight that you need to use and remember for down the line, start with the leash attack. He's going to look in your direction, may even point, and then use this leash attack that shoots out this black looking die that if it hits you is going to pull you directly to his proximity where he's going to do some close range damage. So if you see him pointing or looking at you, just dodge or roll away and you'll be good from this attack. The other mechanic here is to use strong attacks, which are going to help drain his stamina and bring him to his knees. Other than that, for Taxodius, it's just going to be the typical slam to watch out for if you're around him. Before you reach the next boss, you're going to do the Azoth Tree sequence. For this, you're going to plant an Azoth seed and you're going to have to defend the tree. You'll have to withstand waves of mobs that are going to try to attack the tree's health, and you'll just have to out DPS them from here. Having your tank taunt them and round them up away from the tree while everyone uses AoE attacks is a great way to make this part easier and speed it up so that you're successful. This next boss caused us to wipe a crazy amount of times on my first ever run, and this is likely where you're going to wipe many times if you're with a squad of newcomers or those doing this expedition for the first time, so just keep that in mind and try not to get frustrated. In my opinion, this is the hardest part of the expedition by far, even more so than the final boss. The Caretaker will spawn in the center of the large room, and he's going to have a handful of attacks in this first wave. A standard melee attack on the tank, a range attack, which is going to shoot blight energy towards the tank and those around him, and then he'll have that leash attack that we talked about earlier for the DPSers who are longer range and farther away, and you'll just need to dodge that. The beginning is pretty easy. Just DPS him using your abilities and heavy attacks, and then once you get around half health, he's going to move towards the center with a large green circle spawning around him. The green circle will create this rooted wall that you cannot enter until it's back down. There are two methods that I think work best for this. The first being the tank and the healer move inside of the green circle or the wall, and they heavy attack the boss to take out his stamina so he doesn't insta-kill everyone. The 3 DPS players on the outside are going to look out for the lights that shine out of the ground that are going to spawn the blight enemies. The priority here is always going to be to stay alive, obviously, but it's going to be best to kill as many mobs as possible too. The 3 of us would group up and attack them as soon as they spawn together. For us, we actually had the healer outside. If you have any gear score deficiencies, it may be better to have the healer as part of the outside 3 just to help make up for that. The other approach here is to keep the tank in the middle and leave the other 4 outside of the wall to kill the mobs. The tank is going to have to heavy attack on the boss on his wind up, and once that wall goes down, you have to break his stamina bar as quick as possible or everyone will insta die. On top of that, he is going to summon a mushroom that you have to kill pretty quickly as well, so look out for that when you're inside of that wall or circle area. Once the wall breaks, the mobs will be running around. Kite them and try to round them up as best as you can to maximize the AoE damage. You're going to want to wipe the mobs as quick as you can to essentially reset the room and the phase. Now, he's going to add some attacks on this next wave. One of the attacks is going to be a hive of green blight that will slowly come towards you, almost like a hive of bees, so just dodge and keep moving away from that. Also, rather than just the leash, if he looks into your direction at this stage, he's going to actually push a wave of damage towards you, and you can't miss this animation. It's going to be like a giant wave with a hand. You're just going to need to dodge or move out of the way of that because that will one-hit you. The attack he'll add after you break down the wall for the second time is this Michael Phelps swimmer dive where I really don't know what he's doing here, but the guy will just start leaping around the water like a maniac. Just be mindful of where he is as you eliminate the mobs and wait for him to resurface to attack him. I do think you can inflict damage when he is underwater, but I mean, he's just diving all over the place. That's really the core mechanics for this fight. It will take a few tries to master that first phase of the wall going up and the 3 DPS players surviving outside of the wall, and then the chaos that ensues once the wall breaks. The key here is just to group up as best as you can, stack up the mobs, stack your team heals, and then just use your AoE damage. Finally, you'll be at the final boss of this expedition, the Greenskeeper. And I think this boss may have the most mechanics of any boss that we've encountered up until this point in expeditions. For your tank, you're going to want to sidestep the Greenskeeper's double swings that are going to happen one after another, and then her other close range attack for the tank or anyone doing melee is going to be a hard slam around her that you're going to want to dodge. For the DPS players out on the perimeter, she's going to have a laser mechanic where she's going to spew blight at you, and you're going to want to dodge and roll to avoid that damage, but also it's going to light up a yellow or poisonous AoE area that you're not going to want to stand in or be in because it is going to hit you hard as the damage stacks up quick. So if she targets you, try to back up as deep as you can to minimize the area impacted. That way you and your squad have more area to move around the room in. She will also have an underground attack and move towards a targeted player. It's pretty easy to see her coming at you, so just dodge and be mindful of when she's coming at you. During this part, she likely will spawn 2 mobs. They're not anything crazy. You should be able to eliminate them pretty quickly. The other attack or mechanic is going to be when you see her raise her hands, an area will light up yellow on the ground and a boulder will be thrown or fall on you. Now this boulder will one hit you, and the area around the boulder emits that gas and poison that we talked about. So if your teammate does get hit by one of these boulders, you may need to wait before reviving them if they're in that area. And that same idea is going to go with the poison areas in general. You're going to be mindful of the floor when you're reviving your teammates, or you're going to end up dying while trying to pick them up. The last mechanic is what I like to call the nuke. the floor is going to light up with this bright yellow. That's easy to notice. Once she's done 4 boulders, you're going to have a few seconds to run and stand behind one of them. Standing behind a boulder is going to protect you from the damage, and then the boulders will then break. So as the fight goes on, the number of boulders she's going to throw or spawn will decrease. Towards the end, there may only be 2 boulders before she goes into that nuke mode. So just be mindful of where the boulders are when you're in the later phases of the fight, because you don't want to get caught trying to run across the room and not make it. To wrap things up, my key tips and takeaways for this expedition are to do Genesis once you're at a higher gear score and you're looking to increase your already high watermark with a new and challenging content. The Caretaker and Greenskeeper initially seem super challenging, but it just takes a few rounds of experiencing their different mechanics and managing it all, and then you're going to be alright. As far as the expedition, the design and visuals are insanely cool. The sound and music within the expedition is also great, and this just provided a challenging and fun experience that makes for quality endgame content, which at the moment, New World does not have a lot of. If you have any outstanding questions, please drop them in the comments because I do reply fairly quickly and will be able to help you out. I hope you all found this video helpful. If you did, hammer that like button for me and subscribe to the channel to see more. And until next time, I'm out.